to redefining our KM vision and mission. But before we get to that, we wanted to take a little bit of a step back and do some context setting. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So as many of you know, we all belong to CCP, and as part of our CCP work, we've developed a CCP strategy, and the 4 components of that CCP strategy are the why, what, who, and how. And I'll just go through these really briefly, just as a reminder to everyone. So our why do we do what we do? This gets to our mission and our values. So at the CCP level, we believe in the power of communication to save lives by empowering people to adopt healthy behaviors for themselves, their families, and their communities. And then we have a whole set of values that we had come together on and agreed upon. Next slide, please. We also have what work we prioritize. And as a reminder, if you haven't looked at the CCP strategy lately, here we're looking at amplifying certain program approaches such as advocacy or digital technology. We're bringing new thinking to our practice. So we know that we've done a lot of BE and design thinking work over the past 3 to 5 years. We're also looking at a lot of those interrelated challenges related to youth, gender, social class, race, and then looking at some new technical priorities. Next, please. So another piece of our CCP strategy is looking at who is going to do this work. And so that's really looking at all of us, looking at promoting the growth of the next generation of leaders, looking at ways we need to adapt and define our workplace, looking for ways that we can strengthen systems that will help our work go more smoothly, and engaging in partners that will broaden and deepen our impact. Next slide. And then how we make this happen at the CCP level is we're thinking about ways in which we can fund the work. So we have our traditional funding opportunities, private foundations and individuals, and also private sector and other resource mobilization opportunities. So that's just to set the stage of what we're doing at the CCP level. And of course, our KM work fits within our broader CCP work. So if you can go ahead to the next slide. So within the KM unit, we also have the same who, what, how, why. And I'll go through that. But before I get to that, I did want to just remind everyone about our definition of knowledge management. And it is a systematic process of collecting and curating knowledge and connecting people to it so that they can act effectively. Next slide. So our why for the knowledge management unit, and we're really thinking about our why in terms of the impact that it can make in our global health sector. So our why is providing access to reliable health information for health workers in developing countries is potentially the single most cost-effective and achievable strategy for sustainable improvement in healthcare. Next slide. Our how, many of you will be familiar with this, but if you aren't, this is our systematic roadmap. And so you can see that we have a 5-step process that we use on a systematic basis to make sure that we have the most effective and efficient KM programs. You can go to the next slide, please. Another aspect of our how are the specific knowledge management tools and techniques that we use. And you can see here that we've divided them up into different ways in which they can help us achieve our knowledge management work. So we have tools that help people who have questions they want to ask, or if we want to tell, we have tell approaches, we have searching approaches and publishing approaches. These are all part of our KM tools and techniques. Next slide. And then our what, and this is really doesn't even do full justice to everything that is part of our what, but to draw out what is part of our what. These are all the different projects that we're currently working on, either in a prime or a sub role. It gives you a sense of who the donors are, what the funding and the time period is for these different projects, the technical areas that we're working on, and the different scopes of work. So one of the projects that, of course, I'm most familiar with would be the Knowledge Success one, funded by USAID. This is a $35 million project over 5 years, focused on family planning, but other health areas as well. And then you can see our scope of work is to make knowledge available and accessible, support knowledge exchange and collaboration, and also to strengthen KM capacity. We also work on the TCI project, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is the total budget for that project. It's over, I guess it's like almost a 9-year period. It's focused on urban family planning and also has a youth focus. And we have a specific portfolio of knowledge management work that we do there, surrounding managing TCI University. There's a hub structure within TCI, so really, which is across different geographies. So really facilitating sharing and learning across that hub structure. We've also institutionalized use of the most significant change techniques. So really looking at adaptive management as a way to help share and learn across the project and make midterm adjustments. And then of course, we've been repackaging stories and collecting data and learning. On the DHS project, we have a sub role, and we really focus on the work that is considered what they call the dissemination core, and you can see the list of activities that we do there. And then we've also worked on the Ready project, helping on the knowledge management component of that project. And then last but not least, I've just noted that we have a lot of work that we do as part of our breakthrough action work. And this includes both internal knowledge capture and sharing for the project purposes and some external knowledge capture and sharing. I will pause here because I see that Simone has her hand up. So go ahead, Simone.
Hi, everybody. Tara, I was just wondering, for purposes of this meeting specifically, but also in general, are we doing visioning and missioning for the KM COP or the KM unit? And what's the overlap between those two things?
Wow, that is such a great and loaded question, Simone.
Sorry.
I can always count on you for a good question. So we are doing the vision and mission for the knowledge management unit. The knowledge management unit, as I would define it, would be those staff who are working on a knowledge management project that we are a prime or a sub within. That said, because there are a lot of people who work on projects like BA where there isn't necessarily an explicit KM partner or what have you, but it's woven into the whole thread of the project. There are people who work in KM for whom we thought it would be great to get everyone's inputs as we move forward into the next chapter of our work. So there's some overlap. Maybe it's a Venn diagram where, you know, there's people who work on the KM unit, people who do KM work, et cetera. So I hope that's a good, that answers your question. But the goal is to do this for the KM unit so we can think about what our future work might be for the KM unit.
That's perfect. Thanks.
And then Claudia, do you want to just?
Yeah, I can unmute. Yeah, so I'm really fascinated to hear that because I thought it was a little bit broader than that. I'm still very interested, but I do wonder, you know, I will say that I represent programs. And so I'm wondering, so by joining the COP and participating in this process, you know, sort of what's in it for me? What's in it for the other divisions to sort of participate in this vision and mission discussion? Because I'm super interested. I just, you know, want to make sure that whatever my contribution is pertinent to somebody.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I guess it gets to the fact that we're all doing knowledge management as part of our work, whether you're sitting in the KM unit or you're sitting in the program unit or you're in research or you're in, you know, sort of our training pillar at CCP. So today, yes, we are focusing on the KM unit. We're looking at our KM unit and from the perspective of is that we're doing knowledge management with the goal or objective of improving our global health programs. So in sitting in this conversation, it will be a conversation with that lens. That what I will say is that looking at that vision and mission could help you with your daily work, but it's not going to be the focus of the conversation. I don't know if Sarah, if you have anything that you would add to that.
Yeah, Tara, the only thing I would add, Claudia, maybe to help, is that we are sort of the mindset that if we continue to grow the KM unit at CCP, that helps everyone at CCP, because a lot of our approaches and the way that we approach knowledge management has been sort of used by other projects and programs throughout CCP. And so part of this visioning is kind of where do we want to go as CCP in terms of the KM portfolio. And I do think that benefits all of us. And I would say hearing from what could be helpful from a program unit would be very helpful for us as we think through that.
Great, thanks. And so I will stay with you.
Thank you. All right, so thank you both for your questions or clarifying questions. Those are good questions, and I'll say that they have come up previously. So if we can move along to the next slide, please. So just to jump into what our activity is going to be today. So as we're thinking about the current context of knowledge management at CCP, we did want to think about a visioning exercise. There's been a lot going on in our health and development space in terms of pivoting toward doing more work at the regional and country level. And we felt like it was a good time for us to bring in a broader group of people to have the discussion about where we want to go with our knowledge management portfolio at CCP. We really value the perspectives of all the folks on the line here today. This is a wonderful group coming from a lot of different countries and different perspectives. So we really value hearing your thoughts on where you think we should go as a unit. So with that, I think I'll just talk you through a little bit about where we're getting started and maybe just give a little more context to what Sara had just mentioned. So as a knowledge management unit, we want to look to the future and prepare for the future. And Sara and I had actually started out having this conversation with each other. And as we were having it, we're like, no, we really need to broaden this out to, and this was Sara's great idea, you know, a broader group of people. And what would be the best group of people to talk this through with? And we thought of the knowledge management COP. So looking at this slide here today, I'll just give a little bit more context for where we're starting and where we'd like to get to. So today we're going to focus on the vision and the mission. So we all talk about vision and mission pretty frequently, but sometimes it's helpful to remind ourselves of what exactly these two things are. So our vision is our why. So it describes the change that we believe we can make in the world. And you can see from this diagram, that's sort of where we derive our energy from, this power source. And our mission is more our how. It describes the work we do every day as we work toward the vision. So we're driven by the engines we've created here. And then as you go down this pyramid, you see that the next step would be to identify strategies, which would describe our plans. So that's the specific work. And then we get down at the base of our foundation is our values. So today we're only going to be looking at the vision and the mission. Next slide, please. And as I had mentioned, Sara and I had started to have this conversation just with each other. And we thought, no, we have to bring everyone else in. So we did draft a vision and a mission, and we're really just viewing this as a jumping off point, mainly because we know that it's a little easier to react to something rather than to start from scratch. And you'll note as I read through this, that when we're looking at our vision and mission, and this goes to Claudia's earlier question, is that we're really looking at external knowledge management. So that knowledge management that's really looking to ways in which we can use KM almost as an intervention, as a way in which we can improve our health and development outcomes. So I'll read through the draft vision and mission, and then I will hand it over to Sara, who will get us set up for our activity for today. So our vision is every health and development workforce member values, shares, and uses knowledge to improve programs, policies, and services. Our mission is to ensure knowledge is valued, shared, and used among the health and development workforce by first, partnering with domestic, national, and regional entities. Second, co-designing context-specific knowledge management interventions. Third, leading KM innovation and research. And fourth, educating, inspiring, and engaging the next generation of knowledge management practitioners. So you'll have a little bit more time to let this sink in and to think about the vision and the mission. But now I'll turn it over to you, Sarah, to set us up for our activity for today.
Thanks, Tara. So like Tara mentioned, we realize that oftentimes it's easier to react to something. And we also know that just being at CCP for several years ourselves, that we all like to wordsmith things and kind of iterate a lot. And so that is what our activity is going to be. We at Roweda and our KM COP champions are going to, or co-chairs are going to be assigning us to 4 separate small groups. We are asking that our French colleagues be together in one so that you can speak in French and work in French, which is most comfortable to you. But if you would like to be in the French group, please take a moment now to add FR at the end of your name. And to do that, you just click on participants, find your name and hover over it, and you'll see a blue More button. And then when you click on that, you can click to rename yourself to put the FR at the end. So for the first 15 minutes, we will be dropping a mural board link into each of the small groups. We're just going to have you iterate on the draft of the vision, which in the mural board is a yellowish orange color. We are asking that you select a note taker, and at the top block, you can take your notes in the mural board because we thought it would be good to capture your iteration, basically. And then we would like you to come to consensus on what your new vision is going to be. And in the second box below at the bottom of the mural board, we'll have you put your modified version of the vision down there. After about 15 minutes, we're going to have you switch into working on the mission. If it takes you a little less time to work on the vision because it's shorter, that's fine. Then go ahead and work on the mission, and the ask is the same. Iterate on the current mission statement, take notes in the upper quadrant, and then come to consensus and put what you think should be our new mission statement at the bottom. And then at the end, we're going to come together and have a little bit of a plenary where we can discuss differences, similarities that we see. And then the idea is that Tara and I would kind of merge these ideas and come back to a subsequent meeting, a subsequent KM meeting, COP meeting, and report back to you. So those are the instructions. Tara, myself, Renee, Roweda, and Charmaine are going to be facilitating in the room. So if you still have questions, we'll be able to answer your questions in the room. So just one more plea to have you put FR if you'd like to be in the French group. And then I think we are ready to head to our breakouts.
Yeah, so sorry, this is Roweda. So it looks like we only have a couple of people who need to be in the French room. So if anybody is comfortable speaking in French and would like to join them, I invite you to add FR to the end of your name as well, so that we can have a little bit of a quorum in the French room. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and get the breakout room started. And I think we'll have about 20 minutes total in the breakout room. So about 10 minutes on vision and 10 minutes mission. And we'll send a message after the 10-minute mark to prompt you all to move on to the mission statement.
Sounds great. Thank you, Roweda.
Sure.
And I did just put the mural link in there, but we'll make sure everyone gets in there in the small groups.
Okay.
Can anyone see the slide? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we needed more time.
Always
Well,
the case with breakout rooms.
always the case. I know. And I feel like some people like get cut off right at the end and don't get to share their final thoughts, which is always a bummer. So what we had wanted to do right now is just a little, I think we have like 5 minutes, right, Roweda?
Yeah, about 6 or
Yeah.
7 minutes.
Okay. What we were hoping to do is go back to the vision and go to the bottom quadrant, Charmaine, so that everyone could read what people's new vision, down there, thank you, what people's new vision statements were. And if groups had wanted to share out some of their reflection or things that had kind of come up. And then at the same time, while we're doing that, we are also asking that you use the annotate feature, or I guess we could, I think the annotate is probably the easiest, your Zoom annotate feature, to basically put a star or a check mark or some indication of which resonates the most with you. And Renee, if I could ask you to maybe read yours, which is currently in French, if you could read it out in English so that we can all know what that first one is saying, that would be great.
Yes, Sarah. We brainstormed and we found that the target had personnel and personnel in the development area. They are very good targets. So what we added to the vision was just capturing, because we wanted to think that the word capturing is already in valorizing knowledge, but we wanted to be more intentional, more proactive about the capturing of knowledge. So what you see there is just the same version, but with the word intentional capturing of knowledge included in the vision.
That's great. Thank you. I love that. Group 2, did you want to share anything?
Sorry, you didn't get the time to finalize, but Annie can share some of our ideas.
Okay.
Sure, I'll go very quickly. We just wanted to make sure that it was clear that knowledge should be used systematically. We commented that people may not see themselves in the term health and development workforce member. We suggested including collaboration, since that's such a big part of knowledge management. And then we talked about whether the vision was inspiring enough, since visions are usually, very inspiring. So we had a few examples of how we could tack on something to the end to show that inspiring piece.
That's great. Does anyone else want to share what they had added to theirs, or the fine tuning that they had done?
I'll share from group 4. So we talked about some additions that we wanted to make, including adding an equity focus, reflecting the interactive component, and also mentioning something about adaptive management and continuous and ongoing learning. And so our updated vision is every health and development workforce member has the ability to equitably access, exchange, and use knowledge, and continuously learn and collaborate to improve programs, policies, and services. So we kind of used what was there and added our bits within.
That's great. Yeah, and that continuous learning piece is definitely a theme that has come up. Group 3, the group that I was in, do you want to add the pieces that we had added into the vision? Or I can do it in the interest of time. The piece that we added, the main piece that we added, I should say, is the creation. So we were talking about how we don't always just improve programs, policies, and services. Sometimes we have to create things from scratch, and that is part of the work that we do, so that we added together to create and improve programs, policies, and services. Okay, just in the interest of time, Charmaine, can you pull over to the mission statement so we can see the updated mission statements? And I'll just say that from our conversation, oh, it looks like people didn't have time. The continuous learning piece definitely came up. The adding in equity absolutely came up, that we needed to add that into the mission. Other groups, did you want to share maybe some of the pieces that you had added in or changed in rapid fire?
Yes, for group one, like I said, we added every other thing remains, but we added intentional capturing of knowledge. That is what we added in the that's proactive capturing of knowledge in the mission.
Our
That's
group,
all we added.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Go ahead.
well, our group discussed that some people may not see themselves as KM practitioners. Also, the word KM has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. And if we share the mission externally, we were wondering if maybe we should rephrase. And then we talked about how it says engaging the next generation of KM practitioners, but we want to engage anyone working in KM or health, so not necessarily just the next generation. And we had some other feedback as well that we put in the post-it.
That's great. Thank you, Anne. Anyone else in the 30 seconds we have left? One of the things that came up in my group was sort of this tendency to continue to iterate, but trying to add in something about not losing sight of sort of the foundational pieces of knowledge management and sort of some of the KM basics, which sometimes can be lost as you iterate. So that was a recommendation from our group. And then there was also a comment that I got in the chat about expanding like who we would be working with to also governments. And so being a little bit more inclusive in terms of who we would be focusing on. Well, I think our main lesson learned here is we have some work to do. We also need to allocate more time to these conversations. Thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives and your insights on this. And Tara and I will ask to come back to one of the next COP meetings and report back to you all. And we hope that you would be willing to work with us as we kind of work our way down that pyramid. So I guess Renee, back to you.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you everyone for the time spent for us to redefine the mission and the vision of knowledge management. We remind you that we are always available. You can use the knowledge management committee of practice discussion board to share your ideas, share your articles, and also don't forget to share your ideas also using the link to the Google form that was shared. Thank you very, very, very much. And we'll get in touch with our next AM-COP meeting and we'll communicate. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.